When Plarium makes a set of duo champions inside the game, we know how ridiculously OP that they often end up being.
Not you.
And so that's why I was very surprised to hear that the next fusion was technically going to be yet another duo champion after we had Ankara earlier in the year. We're going to be talking about the fusion here today and why I think he's actually a pretty decent champion. So this is going to be Packmaster Shayak. Packmaster Shayak, however you want to say his name there, as you can see. And he is a very interesting addition to the game. So he is a legendary HP-based champion. I'm sure you've seen everyone and their mother on YouTube talking about this guy already, but I actually think he's going to end up being an underrated champion in all honesty. And now I know the last time I made a fusion review video, I was talking about the Incarnate, and I said she was the best fusion because we could skip her without regrets. There's not going to be a catch-22 like that in this video today. I genuinely think this champion is getting underrated by most of the people talking about him so far. Is he going to be meta-changing? Probably not. Is he going to get endgame use? Also, maybe not, but maybe. We'll see. So, let's hop into his kit. A1 attacks one enemy, has a 70% chance of placing the big version of a decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, then teams up with any ally terror beasts, gore masks, hound spawns, hell fangs, fell hounds, and stitched beasts to attack. The allies joining their attack will use their default skills. So an ally attack on the A1 is pretty crazy. This is very similar to somebody like a Lady Mikage. A2 is on a 3-turn cooldown, which is important, so removes all debuffs from this champion and heals them by 50% of their max HP. Then places a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns. The value of the shield is equal to any surplus heal. The shield buff cannot be removed, stolen, or transferred if at least one, and then those champions again on the team. Finally, places a taunt and a reflect damage on this champion for 2 turns. They also cannot be removed, stolen, or transferred if one of those champions is present on the team. This is actually pretty incredible. One of the content creators called this out. It was Nubraids. He called it out that in reality, having this skill is going to be very good for something like a Hydra, because this does book down to 3 turns. And this is going to be one of the only champions that can place a 2-turn taunt on themselves for, on a 3-turn cooldown. So a 2-turn taunt on a 3-turn cooldown. Any other champion in the game that we have currently is placing a taunt for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. So if you think about a champion like Emic or something like that you see running in these crazy Hydra teams or these crazy, other teams wherever you might use them, right, for the taunt and the uneatable composition that you use in Hydra. If you combine this with the video that I made on Lady Aerith, where you're actually using the refresh accessories combined with a reflex set, combined with the mastery that increases the chance of the cooldowns, there is a very solid chance that you're actually going to be able to keep that up with 100% uptime on his A2 as long as it's booked. So this guy could actually help you progress quite a bit inside Hydra. On the A3, this is going to be 100% chance on a 3-turn cooldown, fills the turn meters of all allies by 25%, then places a block buffs, debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns. The debuff cannot be resisted if at least one of those champions are present. Now, his passive is also pretty crazy. When attacked, places a hex debuff on the attacker for 1 turn. Keep in mind, this wouldn't be that good if the Hydra had free reign to attack whoever they wanted, but he is taunting, so they are always going to be attacking him, which means they're getting a hex placed on them. Ally attacks on targets under a hex debuff placed by this champion deal 20% more damage, and when this champion is attacked, all ally and then those list of champions will counter attack. On top of that, he has an ally speed in all battles by 19%. This guy is actually pretty damn good, especially when you're thinking about a Hydra champion. The reason for that, and one of the best champions that I think you could possibly pair him with, is going to be inside, is it Demon Spawn, I believe? Fellhound. Why Fellhound? Well, first of all, he's a rare champion. It's going to be very easy to get awakenings for him. And keep in mind, whenever the Packmaster is attacked, or whenever he's A1ing, he's bringing in all allies, one of which included is Fellhound. What does Fellhound do on his A1, you ask? He has an AoE 35% chance of the small version of a decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Now, on its own, this wouldn't be very good, but he also has a block damage on a target ally for 1 turn. So if you have somebody who's about to die, he just basically places a block damage on them. And an A2 places a 7.5% continuous heal buff and a 15% reflect damage on all allies for 2 turns on a 2-turn cooldown. So let's think about this for a second. This guy in your Hydra team is bringing the small version of a continuous heal and the big version of a reflect damage that has 100% uptime. 100% uptime from a rare champion. Not only that, he's also bringing a block damage so that you can situationally protect somebody on your Hydra team, and he has an AoE decreased speed on the A1, so anytime that your Packmaster gets attacked or he attacks somebody, he's going to come in with that and have the chance of placing a decreased speed. So he's bringing like 2 to possibly 3 rolls in one, and not only that, it gets better. We have recently, with the addition of the new blessings, if we come over here to the Harmony, we of course have the Nature's Bounty, which has a chance of placing the greater version of a debuff. So essentially, if you have a Fellhound that is 6-star awakened, he's going to come in and have a 60% chance that that'll be the big version of a decreased speed instead. Now, that doesn't sound very good, but when you consider how often he'll actually be going into the attack, whether it be on the ally attack A1s or whether it be on the counter attack passives, this guy is going to get so many chances to go ahead and put up numbers. Not only that, his A1 is also based off of defense and attack, so you can build him with either one and get his damage pumped up a little bit. And on top of that, Fellhound is known to be a fairly competent damage dealer. He is basically the fastest campaign farmer inside of Brutal campaign for 12.6 and 12.3, right? He's a champion that can do it the fastest, and you don't do that if you're hitting like a wet noodle. So overall, I think Packmaster is going to be a very decent champion. I'm not going to lie, I don't think he is a must fuse. I don't think he's a champion that your account is going to be crippled with unless you have him, and I don't think that he's somebody that you should really feel too bad about missing if you decide not to go for him. But I can speak with certainty myself that I have decided that I am going to go for this champion. He has a very badass aesthetic on its own. And not only is this champion going to be useful in Hydra, but if we also think about somewhere like a City of Centranos, sometimes in the rotations, I'm sure we're going to have this guy paired up with some of those hounds as well that we can actually bring into the fight. On top of that, we can get use out of him inside the Faction Wars, because Faction Wars for Orcs is notoriously hard to complete, in my opinion. It's probably one of the factions I struggled with the most. Unless you're looking at the crazy legendary champions, there's not a whole lot in here. You are very dependent on certain champions, right? So Tagore for your Reviver, you pretty much need a Duke or a Duck for the decreased defense and all that sort of good stuff, right? Unless you have a Zargala. There's not too many options for free-to-play or low-spend players, so I think this guy coming in, and even if you don't have him booked, placing that taunt, having some ally attacks coming in, all that sort of good stuff is going to help you out so much. And on top of that, there is actually Terror Beast inside here, who is one of the champions from this faction, so you could combine him with a Terror Beast, who is not the best, to say the least, but better than nothing, right? So I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this particular champion. I'm actually kind of excited to see how the fusion goes. It is worth noting as well that Plarium has basically introduced some FOMO to this as well, and kind of hinted at the fact that they might introduce some more champions to accompany this guy in the future. I want to be very clear, and if you think back, Plarium tends not to go back and rework champions once they've been introduced into the game, even if everybody thinks they are ridiculously broken. For example, Taurus and Marichka took like 2 years or something like that to be pseudo-nerfed in the introduction of a Narcisse and an Ankara. They weren't even nerfed themselves, right? Sifi and Rotos got reworked a little bit, but they were just so prevalent in the meta until the introduction of UDK. Essentially, they don't go back and rework champions, and why that's important is because Plarium hinted that they might introduce another Hound to go along with this guy. However, inside his kit, it basically describes the champion specifically, and it doesn't say hounds or dogs or a certain faction, anything like that. So I'm very hesitant to believe that even once they introduce a champion, that they'll go back into his kit and add that to it. I could be wrong on that, of course. Maybe they're introducing something new and they'll actually keep up to date with it, but I've been playing the game long enough to know Plarium, and I highly doubt that his kit is going to change once it's actually introduced. Thank you guys all so much for the support on the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.